alcohol is sold to us as the best way to have fun, excitement, belonging, connection, to relax and reward yourself. And I saw that in my peer groups, in my culture, in media. That messaging was everywhere. And it wasn't just having a drink is the best way to have fun and belong and all that kind of stuff. It was actually being drunk is. I watch all this funny stuff now about Generation X. Generation X is by far the biggest binge drinkers. Like Gen Z is not anything close to Generation X. And that was my culture.
Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the Live Deep podcast. I feel like a fanboy here, honestly. I'm so excited to have Veronica Valli here on the show. Veronica, thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's good to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. So I feel as the host today that I have a tremendous challenge ahead of me because I'm a listener of your show. I consume your information. I follow you. I've been inspired by you. And I know how much wisdom you have to offer, not just my listeners, but anybody on the topic of alcohol and sobriety. So my challenge is, how do I condense and draw that information out of you as best I can with questions? So I have some questions lined up for you, but first, just for an attempt at your credentials: 20 years of sobriety, 17 years of experience of some form of coach or recovery coach, life coach, author, host of an amazing podcast. Encourage everyone to check it out, called Soberful. Random credential here, leads a Facebook group with over 15,000 people that are being led and inspired by her. So Veronica, anything that I kind of left out there and by way of your background and credentials?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I've actually been sober, it'll be almost 24 years in May. So I've been working for like 22 years or something like that. But I was a psychotherapist in the UK. I ran and started a rehab and had a private practice. But since I came to America, which is 14 years ago now, I've worked at a coach because I work internationally all over the world. And coaching suits me so much more better than psychotherapy.
And from the United Kingdom, and we were chatting offline, has probably experienced more of the US than most people, has lived in Utah and where are you sitting right now, Veronica?
I'm in Alabama. I've lived in Florida, Long Island, the Midwest, Illinois, Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and California. So yeah, I've lived a lot. I lived over, and I love the deep. Turns out I was a Southerner.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
I'm sitting here. I've lived in two places, New Jersey and Colorado, and I talked to you and you've been all over. So I'm envious. So, and you can visit, and I'll put all this in the show notes. You can go to veronicavalli.com and learn about her story and all the things that she offers. But again, because I want to get into kind of the crux of the conversation, I'm going to just jump right in with a question that I've just been meaning to ask you and been looking forward to asking you. So you have said, Veronica, that drinking is a symptom of an underlying, my words here, but issue or problem. Meaning or implying that it's not the problem. There are or is maybe more important problems that either have to be addressed coinciding with or on its own. So can you please just kind of elaborate on that and just say a little more about what you mean by that?
I think that becomes clear when we try to stop drinking, right? Because the reason that people try to stop drinking is they're beginning to realize they have consequences that they don't want, and it's really bad for most areas of their life. And then we find that it's just not as easy as going, oh, okay, well, I just won't drink again, right? Because what most people discover, and this was certainly true for me, and I feel it's true for a lot of my clients, is we have outsourced the management of our feelings and emotions to alcohol. So we have outsourced our internal management to external things. And here's the thing about alcohol, it works. My drinking changed dramatically when I was 18 years old, which is barely the legal drinking age in the UK. I mean, I drank pretty recklessly from the word go, but when I was 18, I went through a drug-induced psychosis, and it resulted in paranoia and panic attacks and anxiety. And I had absolutely no way to deal with that. And I had no way of asking for help and saying what was wrong with me. And I very quickly realized that alcohol helped with those symptoms. And my brain made that connection. Now that's an extreme version, but I just did a TikTok on this. I remember being at college and the boyfriend, whoever I was dating, I could tell he was going to dump me, and he did it on the phone. And I put the phone down and I went, this is a 2 bottle of wine job, because I could see all of these really uncomfortable and unpleasant feelings coming towards me: grief, shame, self-loathing. And I didn't want to feel them. And I never thought I would survive them. So alcohol always fixed that. It just fixes it. So what happens when we stop drinking is it's almost like we're emotional teenagers. I discovered, and a lot of my clients discovered, it's not drinking, it's dealing with life.
Mm.
It's navigating life, dealing with stress, I want to tell you, dealing with other people is one of the biggest, like most challenging things we have to do, dealing with other people, right? But it's even like we don't know how to celebrate or have joy or fun without alcohol. So it's not just the negative feelings, we also believe it enhances the good ones. And I think that when we're in the process of stopping drinking, we're just so raw because we don't have our best friend to take all of that stuff away. So I always say that sobriety is 10% not drinking, which is very important, and 90% emotional sobriety.
Gosh, so much. Okay, so a quick question for you. So you said when you were 18, you had this drug-induced episode that produced, panic, anxiety, and things like that.
Yeah.
How about before then? Was there any kind of baseline discomfort or anxiety
A defining characteristic for me of having an alcohol problem was feeling very uncomfortable in my own skin. Like I didn't like myself very much.
What is that? Sorry, what does that feel? Was that like a palpable conscious realization, or more in hindsight you felt that way?
Oh no, very aware of it. It kind of I never felt like I fitted in. It's always extraordinary to me with my client group. And my client group is CEOs and leaders and successful people. It tends to be, but I've worked across all client groups. I've worked with criminal justice. I've worked with teenagers. I've worked with people who are homeless. And I'm going to tell you, everybody feels like that. I've worked with people who are really successful, and they would say to me, I just never felt like I fit in. So it was this feeling of not feeling of fitting in. I definitely didn't have very good self-esteem. My faulty belief was you liking me was more important than me liking me. So I was not very congruent in my behavior and in my words because I just wanted you to like me. And I discovered alcohol at 13, 14, and it instantly that hit my body and I went, oh my God, this is the solution.
Yeah. How did you get exposed to it?
Well, I'm Generation X. In the UK, it was not hard. It's not like America. I was dressing up as a girl with makeup and heels and you could go to bars and clubs. ID didn't exist when I was a teenager. But I also want to tell you, it's my culture. And I write about this in my book. Alcohol, and I think it's the same in America and Australia, it is sold to us as the best way to have fun, excitement, belonging, connection, to relax and reward yourself. And I saw that in my peer groups, in my culture, in media. That messaging was everywhere. And it wasn't just having a drink is the best way to have fun and belong and all that kind of stuff. It was actually being drunk is. I watch all this funny stuff now about Generation X. Generation X is by far the biggest binge drinkers. Gen Z is not anything close to Generation X. And that was my culture. And also as a young woman, feminism was rebranded as we can drink like the boys. That's how feminism was sold to me. And I that just seemed real. I wanted those things. I wanted fun and excitement because you do when you're a teenager. And I wanted to belong and I wanted to feel connected because I never did. And alcohol, that messaging on so many levels, it was sold to me as that solution. And I was all in.
And that's so dangerous because not only did you discover this thing kind of, I'll say, organically on your own that could help you cope with some of these uncomfortable feelings, not only did you not know that was setting you up for some problems downstream, society, culture, advertisements, people around you were also propping that up and promoting it and saying this was a positive thing, which probably, I'm assuming, made you dive in that much deeper thinking it was okay.
Yeah. That's what in England, that's what we did in the 80s, right? Is we would lie to our parents, be at someone else's house or just out somewhere. We will have stolen some alcohol from our parents or got someone older to buy it. Or again, if you looked old enough, you could get it. And we would all just neck it down. Like that was a wild time in rural England in the 1980s, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
I'll
we
tell you
would
what.
then we would throw up.
It doesn't sound that much different than Bricktown, New Jersey in the late
Mm,
1990s. So I'll say here's something that's really resonating with me. When I look back now on my life, from the earliest I can remember, I had struggled with anxiety. I can remember my mom bringing me into a licensed clinical social worker's office and sitting down, and I felt a little uncomfortable, but getting, prescribed things like Kava Kava and St. John's Wort. Point is, there was always this baseline anxiety there. When I discovered alcohol at a St. Patty's Day party when I was 13 years old, similar age to you, the first time I ingested that beer, I can remember it vividly. And I don't remember that much vividly about my childhood, but the reason is, and this ties into what you're saying, it was for me, you said outsourced management of pain. It was the first time that I ever ingested something that changed my internal state. I
mhm.
discovered essentially fundamentally that I can take something, put something into my
Yeah,
body that can change how I'm experiencing life. And that was the hook, irrelevant to
100%.
alcohol. That was the switch that went off in my head. So that socially, when, eighth grade, ninth grade, honestly, I can remember in between eighth and ninth grade, that's when culturally drinking took off in my town. It's no wonder as I look back that that's something I grabbed to because, like you, that chronic state of just feeling uncomfortable or feeling out of place that persisted because it was never addressed. And then I also discovered this thing that can just turn it off. And what happened with me was I got to the point where I couldn't socialize. I couldn't go to a party. I couldn't do anything without that crutch because it was the only thing that turned off like the self-conscious part of me that actually allowed me to be comfortable. And then I can go down rabbit holes there, but that did not serve me well long term. We'll say that.
Yes, exactly the same. Exactly the same. And I want to tell you, social anxiety is probably one of the most common reasons that people drink. I think pretty much every client I've ever had, more or less, a lot of it has been like, I can't go for dinner. I can't go to that cocktail party or whatever it is. I can't just hang out with friends. Social anxiety is a huge thing.
Yeah. Jumping ahead though, just piggybacking off of that, you said something that I think is so important, which is these are my words, but one of the reasons alcohol is so potent when it gets its grip on you is that it can do two things for you. It can solve for that social anxiety piece, make you more sociable, affable, fun, whatever, but then also help you cope with life and stress and pressures and things like that. So for me in my journey, I'm 39 by the way, I got to a point where I don't know why or how, we don't have to explain it, but I got socially very comfortable. Like I could talk to anybody. I don't get comfortable. I have confidence. But as I grew and I had kids and more responsibilities professionally and personally, I started taking on more stress. That's when I started using alcohol very intentionally for almost a medicinal reason in hindsight, where I would just go to it and think this thing is going to turn off this feeling. So it doesn't have to be one or the other, but when it gets you with both, where it's amplifying positive and helping with negative, I think when you agree, that's where you're stuck.
Absolutely. But what that's all about is perception. If you think again about our culture, right? Not drinking alcohol was never presented to me as a lifestyle option, ever in any way, shape, or form. Unless you grew up Mormon or Muslim, not drinking in my generation, it was like you had two heads. So if you think when we were growing up, it's assumed you're going to get a job and a driver's license and you're going to drink alcohol because that's what grown-ups do. So not drinking was never presented to us as a lifestyle option in the way that hopefully it's beginning to be now. I'm encouraged by a lot of things that have changed. And that this is the thing. We are so convinced of the belief that alcohol is the best way to have fun and relax, all those kind of things, despite we can see evidence to the contrary. So what I did was I just thought I just have to figure out how to manage it. If I can just figure out the secret formula that means I can enjoy a drink and not have these catastrophic consequences, I know it's there. I've just got to figure it out. Whatever it is, I know it's there. And that's what it's a delusion. We are deluding ourselves. And that's what most people do. We know from the research, people do that generally for 10 years before they accept that they cannot drink and alcohol's not their friend.
Let's stay there for a second. And I'll say too, you had me thinking, I'm like, wait, was there anybody that I knew growing up that didn't drink? And the answer is no. I,
Hmm.
I, I can't think. And if they didn't,
It was
I
a
would
weird
immediately be like,
religious
but
thing.
why? Yeah,
Well, they
why?
were, yeah,
What's the reason?
yeah.
So, okay, so you just said something really fascinating there. So, if you said something about, so for 10 years, people are trying to figure out how to like kind of crack the code. Say more about that.
So it's about the belief system, right? So when I stopped at 27, it felt devastating to me. I felt devastated. I felt like I was giving up everything. Now, the reason I did it was it had become my anxiety and panic attacks. I mean, I was suicidal for years. It was a horrible way to live. And I would have done anything to be free of them. And when it became clear to me that I needed to stop drinking and they would get better, I was like, fine, whatever. I mean, I don't love this, but I'll accept the deal. Like, I know that I'm just 27. I'm going to be boring. I'm never going to go out. I'm never going to have fun. I'm never like all those things are gone for me now. I mean, I'm never going to get laid again. I'm just going to be this quiet, dull person, but at least I will be calm and I won't have like the terror of the panic attacks. Like, okay, I'll accept that, but I'm not happy about it. So the reason that we try everything, right? We the mathematical equations that we will try and conjure up to add up to the fact that we can drink alcohol is because we believe if we don't have alcohol in our life, we also will never have fun, excitement, belonging, connection, get laid, relax. So it's not giving up alcohol, it's giving up that.
Let's give up
And
life.
it
Life as you know
feels,
it.
yeah, it feels devastating. I was devastated, but I had motivation to keep going. And here's the wonderful thing, none of that's true. None of it's true. It's a lie. It's a delusion. But we believe it so deeply and it has been programmed so deeply into us that it takes us a while to come to that. And then there is a period of stopping drinking and getting to this new wonderful place. It doesn't happen on day two. So there's this period of kind of no man's land where it's up and down, it's a roller coaster till you get to the really, really good stuff. So it's like sticking that out till you get to the really, really good stuff. And I've lived in that place for a long time. I mean, I'm just like, I'll be honest, I look at people. I have a pool opposite where I live, and in the summer, sometimes people are drinking, and every so often will think, I'm so glad that I don't believe I have to do that to have a good time, to relax, to enjoy a Saturday afternoon at the pool. Like, I'm so glad that I no longer have that belief system. It's a belief system, Jesse.
What at 27 made you associate your panic attacks and your anxieties specifically with alcohol? Like what gave you that spark or that motivation out of nowhere? Not out of nowhere, seemingly it was building, but how did you make that connection on your own and then move in that direction?
Do you know, it's very weird when I think about this time of my life because I feel like I almost walked into sobriety. At 18, I was in drug-induced psychosis and I was suicidal. And I did try and finally look for some help. And I went to the doctor, prescribed prescription medication, which just started a prescription drug habit. I had a little bit of counseling. So I was looking for answers for about 9 years. I would repeatedly approach professionals. I've been to psychiatrists, psychologists, churches, became an evangelical Christian for a bit because they just looked happy. Like I read every self-help book. I was searching desperately for an answer to my problem and never occurred to me it was alcohol. Never occurred to me. Again, I just thought adults drink. I just have to figure out managing it. What happened is in my insanity, I couldn't handle groups very well. Like that always triggered anxiety and panic. But I could, so work was always a challenge trying to navigate that. So I figured out I could work one-on-one, like I could do that. And I had a degree in women's studies. And I thought, I'll become like a counselor, like a therapist, because I can do that. And the local college I went to, the only course it had was in addictions counseling. And I was like, oh, I'll do that then. And so I sat there for several months kind of going, hmm. And that's when I learned about the link between anxiety and alcohol and went, oh, crap. I had been desperate for so many years. I was lost. I was lost and I was broken. On the outside, you would look at me like I was a fairly regular, I'd never been fired from a job. I worked, I partied. Like you wouldn't, think maybe I was a little chaotic, but there was probably not a lot on the outside that made you think. But inside, I was lost and I was broken and I was desperate. And through that, I found Alcoholics Anonymous. So what did it for me? I went to AA. I didn't relate to people. I didn't identify. None of those things had happened to me. I didn't even drink every day. I didn't know if I was going to stay or go. I'd stopped drinking. I wasn't sure if that was going to be, I really was still very lost. And then I heard a person speak in a meeting and they spoke about fear. And they spoke about fear in a way that I'd never heard anyone in my life speak about fear. And they spoke about fear as being the absolutely driving force behind their drinking. And they were frightened of everything and anything. And I just sat there and went, oh my God, that's me. That's exactly how I felt my whole life. What do I do? And they went, do the 12 steps. I went, sign me up. And everything changed.
So it was a switch.
Here's the thing. I think I always presented for help. When I was looking for help, I was presented with the anxiety disorder. And I don't know if I probably lied and minimized if they asked me about my drinking. You have to know what your problem is to find the solution. And I thought my problem was mental health, and it wasn't. My problem was drinking. And the reason I had bad mental health problems was because of my drinking.
So not the other way around. The mental health drove the drinking caused the mental health issue?
The mental health problems came from substances, from drugs and alcohol.
Got it. You said earlier that drinking is a belief system, or maybe I'll phrase it this way, and tell me if I butcher this, but the belief that you need to drink is a belief system.
Yeah.
Are you also saying then that there's no productive, useful, healthy place for alcohol in our culture or even in humanity?
I want to say that there's something very human about catching a buzz and escaping. I also, I've studied it a lot, and prohibition doesn't work. So there's a place that human beings, we can see this historically, have had the desire to get lost and to numb. And I think that's a function of the human condition. If we're talking about in our culture now, it's like having a really amazing secret that you don't need alcohol in your life in any way, shape, or form, because you don't miss out on anything and everything is better. So do I think, no, it's a belief system. It's a perception that you need it to celebrate, or it's Saturday evening and you're relaxing. Here's the thing. We know that no amount of alcohol is good for you. Like, it has a cost. The cost far outweighs any perceivable benefit. The cost is so heavy. No, the answer would be no. Like, I mean, I remember being, I think it was maybe close to 2 years of sobriety. And I was at a big concert with some friends, and it was, like a big concert. We'd saved up, and it was a whole, and I was like that. We were at the front, and I was there. I was in the moment, and I kept noticing where are they? They were at the bar. They were at the toilet. They just missed half of like the best song ever. And I just had this massive, like, I'm having more fun than they are. And I was always told that not drinking is boring. I was always told that. And then that just kept occurring, where it's like, and I've been sober in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, and I'm now in my 50s, and I've done everything. My wedding, I'd say 70% of the people at my wedding were sober. Oh, did we dance our asses off? Sober people love to party. The journey of sobriety is shattering a very entrenched belief system, and that's a fundamental part of it.
Yeah, and you're living proof that it's brighter and more joyful on the other side. You said something earlier about joy. You just used the word joy, frankly. And I know that you, on your podcast, Soberful, you just did an episode about finding joy. And I want to touch on something, and it actually goes back to you saying, hey, I think you look like this, like you look towards the pool in your neighborhood and you see people having fun at the pool. I think what happens with alcohol is if you allow it, it becomes connected to and associated with every single activity socially and whatnot that you could possibly do, so that you feel as though you can't do those things anymore. You made that clear. On your episode, you were talking about how alcohol can almost, I don't think you use this word, but like put a veil in front of you so you don't even notice the things that have the potential to bring you that joy. You talked on your show about small things, like you guys were talking about like washing cars and things, but one of the things is just like actually seeing the sun, or noticing the sky and noticing things as you're driving and taking those things in. One of the things that has always been a huge red flag for me because my drinking has oscillated over the years. It's gone up and down, and usually it goes up and down with the stress that I'm experiencing in my life. But one of the things that I've noticed, and I use where I'm sitting right now in Colorado, when we first moved out here 3 years ago, I would go for walks. I would take in the mountains that were out in the background. I would hear birds. I would smell the air. I would just appreciate and find joy. And another word, I think, deeper than that, presence. Time felt slow. Things felt good. I felt safe. Like I was appreciating things. If there were times in the last 3 years where I would go on that same walk and I wouldn't see anything, I wouldn't feel anything, I wouldn't notice anything, I would just be inward and internal. And the feelings, if I'm being honest, nebulous as they were fear. It was like I was tense about something. I was stressed about something. There's a question in here, I promise. But one of the things in your show that I was really like, yeah, I can't wait to talk to Veronica about this is that connection between losing presence when alcohol is involved in your life and the inverse being true. When alcohol is not in your life, it allows you to actually have like joy and presence in your life. So can you just talk a little bit about presence, what it feels like to have it, and why also maybe alcohol doesn't allow us to experience the best that life has to offer in a sober state?
I think one of the biggest gifts of sobriety, and see, I didn't know any of this. This isn't why I got sober. These are all the like amazing revelations that come further down the road. Like if you'd have told me, I wouldn't have believed you. But is being fully present in my life. And it was only when I was fully present in my life, I was able to see the contrast of how much I wasn't fully present in my life, that I was living a 50% life because there was a brainstorm in my head where just self-obsession and just internal and dark and obsessing about me in my life and not being okay and just missing so much. And it is, I think waking up is a good metaphor. That happens over time in sobriety, but so many of those moments. One of the things that people always comment on, and I remember this, is the first time you really, really laugh. My best friend and my husband are the two people who can like bring me to like tears. So many times I've had that with clients in rehab where they're just like, it's so different. Everybody comments on it, like how fuller and richer it is to laugh with people, and because it's a form of connection. It's a deep emotion, and it's like, oh my God, like I know I definitely had nights out where we were like laughing, but it wasn't like this. This is
Yeah.
richer. This is more, and I could have settled for that. Like I've definitely had nights out where we were screaming with laughter, and I would have said that was like the best it gets. And I would look back and think, God, what if I'd settled for that? When there is this richness. So here's what happens. When we struggle with alcohol, we leave ourselves by degrees. We do things that are out of alignment with our values. We say things, we're not fully representative of our deepest version of ourselves, and we leave ourselves by degrees. Sobriety is the journey back to ourselves. And when you fully connect with who you are, there's no buzz like this. Like, it's less. Drinking is less. I don't want less. I'm a person of more.
Abundance, right? I'm going to try to put words to what you're describing there, but maybe that I'm picturing like my friends and I out at a bar at 23 years old down in the Jersey Shore, and like someone says something or someone does something and you have like this really big, hearty laugh. But the emotion under there, the feeling, it's almost like this giddiness and excitement versus this genuine present moment of laughter and connectivity and sobriety with another human. The words I would try to put to that are depth and authenticity. And I'm trying to find words for this, but maybe that's more powerful than the fleeting giddiness that's fueled by alcohol, right? Emotion that I've noticed that I feel when I'm sober that I can't feel when I'm using, or pick a term, is gratitude when I look at my children. I find that when I'm just doing the rat race and either trying to control my life and then releasing on the other side because I'm burned out or stressed and I'm never kind of landing in that middle place of presence, I can just pass through a room and not even notice the subtle things that, like, maybe my daughter's wearing a princess dress and I didn't know she snuck that on her own, or my son is on the floor like playing with something, right? I notice those things. And when I notice them and I kind of stops me in my tracks and I look at them and I just have that present moment of just like that gratitude, like that is the most powerful thing. And that to me is the thing that I'm after. And that's what I'm searching for, trying my best to live in those types of moments all the time and not miss them or mute them by ingesting something, even if it's ingesting information, podcasts, alcohol. I mean, it's all in the same kind of vein. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I just, life is such a gift, and and it didn't feel like that when I was drinking, and I don't want to miss anything, and I don't even want to miss the bad stuff, because those are all opportunities for me to grow, and I relish growth, and we are all being called to grow. It's a basic human function. As long as you have breath in your body, you're being called to be more than you are right now, and I want to be fully available for that. I mean, yeah, and all that's changed is a shift in my perception.
And belief,
Hmm.
right? You mentioned evangelical Christian. I found faith at 30. Irregardless, I remember there was a pastor that said something to me and it stuck. And it's, if it's healthy, it grows. That
Mm.
could be a company, a person, a relationship, an organization, right? But if it's healthy, it grows. And obviously, the opposite is true. Veronica, I heard a quote. It was 2 weeks ago because I'd known that you were coming on the show, and I jotted it down immediately. And I was like, I want to read this quote. So if you'll bear with me, it's 2 sentences. I'll try to beat it, but I want to read this quote and just have you respond to it. So the quote is, sorry, addiction is a progressive narrowing of the things that bring us pleasure. Happiness is a progressive expansion of the things that bring us pleasure. The former emerges passively, the latter takes work. You mentioned sobriety is a journey back to I'm going to use a word here, but like a centeredness. But as you hear that, addiction and narrowing of the things with pleasure, happiness is a broadening, but one of them happens passively, and I'll even say insidiously, and the other one takes work. What do you think of that?
I love that. One of the words that I use all the time is that sobriety is an expansive life. And again, you can't see it when you're in it. But when I thought I lived a full expansive life. I traveled around America when I was 19 years old with my girlfriends. You know, I went to the Grand Canyon, all that kind of stuff. The first thing we always did whenever we got anywhere was go to the nearest Irish bar because those were our people. And then we would go and do the Grand Canyon really fucking hungover and not do anything as full as what it could be done because we were managing hangovers and when we were going to drink. So I thought I was living the life, but I look back and see how much smaller it was. Sobriety is an expansive life and it continues to expand. It just continues. And I mean, I want to tell you, this is part of the emotional sobriety bit. I remember getting to this point myself, and I've seen lots of people, my clients, get to this point. On this journey back to yourself, there is a massive realization occurs. And what that realization is that you have to be completely responsible for the experience you want to have. What is required is that you have to put effort into it. And so I would never use the word that sobriety is hard. I think having a drink problem is hard. That's freaking hard work. Sobriety requires effort. It requires effort that you have to put in. I think it's all equally to have this expansive life. You have to face the fear of being completely responsible for the experience that you want to have.
Wow. Okay. So 2 words I want to pull out there. So effort and responsibility. I'm going to start with the effort piece. So you're saying, and I agree, but you're saying that it's harder to be sober.
No. Having an alcohol problem is harder.
Okay.
Have you ever been to work hungover?
It's awful. Yes.
Have you ever had to do things like hungover and anxious and full of shame and like your head on fire going over the things that you did or said? Have you ever lied or manipulated because you're covering up? That's hard work. It's hard work living like that.
Hard, heavy, and in hindsight, shame. Those emotions are heavy and very difficult.
Yeah. Sobriety requires effort, and effort is a growth mindset and hard is a fixed mindset. So effort for my efforts, and I might not. The thing is about effort, it's often a delayed reward, right? I can exercise today, but nothing's changed. But if I do it for 30, 40 days, I'll begin to see some changes, right? And that requires effort. So effort and consistency are the two words that I frequently use. So it requires effort, and often it's a delayed reward. But here's the thing: I mean, definitely put effort into my drinking, but there was no payoff. It didn't end anywhere great. I put effort into my sobriety. It does end up somewhere great.
Yeah. On the responsibility side of things, you're saying, can you kind of rephrase that and what role responsibility plays? And then maybe talk about on the other side, when people don't own that responsibility, like why is that? Why are we doing that? Or what can be the catalyst to get people to take that responsibility?
I honestly, I don't know if I know the answer to that, but it's what I see. And let me explain what I mean about being completely responsible for the experience we want to have. Obviously, there's lots of circumstances outside of our control. And this is the hill that I'll die on as a therapist, is that we are completely responsible to how we respond to what happens to us. COVID was a good example. Everything changed overnight and wasn't a lot I was in control of there. But I get to choose my response to it. I get to choose how I navigate that. I think it's quite terrifying because I think certainly my truth was, and I see it with clients, is we get stuck in our stories. And let me tell you, this is why I'm not happy. And this is why I'm unsuccessful. And this is why things aren't working out the way I want them to do. It's because this happened and that's out of my control. And it's not my fault. And I think there's a real seduction to being in that place. And it feels very, very true and very, very real. And it's very, very seductive. And this is not to minimize that people go through some very, very difficult things. I've been through some very, very difficult things. I have always held on to, I can choose how to respond to this. And going through a difficult thing, it might be, I need to cry and mourn or whatever it is, but I'm not going to get stuck in this place that this thing that happened last year, 10 years ago, 20 years, 30 years ago is going to be my story. It's not. And I think that everybody has that choice. And I think that there is a way to make the best of our circumstances and build from there.
Yeah, it's agency. We have agency in our lives. And you touched on the word respond. I know that we have a mutual friend in Benoit Kim. When he was on the
Such
show,
a great example of that.
Yeah. And he talked about the difference with a response and a reaction. Response, some words associated there: intentionality, thoughtfulness, hesitation. On the reaction side, more like impulse, instinct, and maybe just what feels right in the moment. And it's an important distinction there. And by the way, on the topic of agency, and we're getting to know each other here, but I fully am passionate about the power that we can have in our own lives and the decisions we make. I mean, I grew up and my father, he passed away from AIDS, from a heroin addiction. There was a lot of dysfunction. There was a lot of things in my life as a teenager that could have set me on a trajectory of me just being seduced by this idea that this is the cards I've been dealt and I can't play them, and this is just the way that it is. But being able to respond, and granted, I did not get it right. I'm far from perfect, and I made a lot of mistakes, alcohol being one of them. But I do fully believe that we all have agency, and you can start today to move in a direction that is going to be more fruitful in your life. And kind of that said, a question, Veronica, and believe it or not, we're getting to the theme of the episode. I was hoping to dive in at 40 minutes in here, but
no worry. You've asked some great questions. So
thank you. I want to ask some more great questions, just a couple that hopefully will be practical and helpful for anyone listening that is moved or inspired to have agency in their life and head in that direction. I mentioned to you offline that the ATUM community, the ATUM fitness community, some of them are going through an alcohol-free April, an AF April. By the way, we're trying to put that on the map. I have no idea why. There's a dry January, sober October, and nothing in between. So we're trying to do an AF April. And when those folks go through the 30 days, some of them may be sober for the first time or the first time in a long time. I wanted to ask you if you could just synthesize or summarize all of your work and experience and just offer a couple tangible, practical steps that people can take if they want to continue on that journey of sobriety, so they can go from this 1 month, maybe to 2 months, And then maybe one day they'll be blessed and sit in your situation where you're at 24 years of sobriety. So can you just, I know it's a big question and big responsibility, but what are some good, like tried and true meat and potatoes sobriety steps that people can take in those early stages of making that decision?
I think the research is really supportive of this is community of like-minded people. I think that when you stop drinking, wherever you live or wherever you are, it always feels like you're the only one. It feels like everybody else is fine. Everyone's fine, having drinks on a Friday night. They're fine, having a few beers on a Sunday. I'm the only one. And that doesn't feel good. And it's hard to be the only one. So I think having community and connection, first of all, is really, really helpful. People who kind of like get it, are like, I don't want to go back to it. I want to just keep going. That is enormously helpful. And now with the internet, that is possible in all kinds of different ways. The other thing is, I think, is to have some kind of program. And there's lots of different ones out there now. That's why I wrote my book, because I wanted people to have like a program that stands by itself, which is it's a personal development program. So the next thing is have a personal development program that's focused on knowing yourself, being aware of, like, is there some stuff that needs some work here, and having boundaries, having balance, connecting, all of that kind of stuff, and being purposeful about all of those things. I think just that I'm not going to drink and I'm just everything's going to stay the same doesn't work. So use it, because when you don't drink, you are going to have more time and money and more energy, and use those things on personal development. And there's multiple ways to do that. So seek out the one that feels like it resonates for you.
Love it. On the community side of things, any specific kind of frameworks or structure? I know you mentioned just go to the computer and search, but how does someone actually find that community locally? And do you think that in person is greater than a virtual relationship, or is anything better than nothing?
Yes, I think both. You need, so I think what's great about the internet is that for people who just feel like there's nothing where I live, or I don't want anyone to know I have a problem, the internet is fantastic. Online is wonderful. And I also think we do need in real life sober friends as well. So not to keep plugging my book, but at the back of my book, there's a list of online and in person. But yes, you have to Google. If you live in a rural place, there's probably just going to be AA. But if you live in a big place, there's all kinds of things. I mean, I've had clients find like there's a sober running club and a sober book club, So you'll be surprised if you look that there's all kinds of things out there.
I think it's common knowledge these days that if you're going to attack a habit you're removing, oftentimes it's beneficial to replace with a positive one. In terms of like the blocking and tackling in the day-to-day, any like situational things that they should change environmentally, anything that they can do like really pragmatic that can kind of help make sure they protect themselves if they have something like a trigger or an urge or whatever word you want to use?
Yeah. So, I mean, just things like get alcohol out of your house. And I always tell people, like, change your glasses, buy yourself new glasses and buy some nice non-alcoholic something or other. I don't think it's a good idea to, if you drank beer, the non-alcoholic drinks, I've seen people do really well, but I've also seen people relapse on them. So drink stuff that you don't really associate with alcohol, and make sure you have that reward and treat. It's really important to have treats and to reward yourself. So it's each stage is different. So if we're talking like the first like 30 days, 90 days, the likelihood of having triggers and cravings, that again, having a community, people who understand. For a lot of people, it's like 5 p.m. Like I have a glass of wine and I cook dinner, or I have a beer at the end of the day to reward myself. For the first 7 days, at 5 p.m., go for a walk or go to a yoga class, or just do something that breaks that connection. Now that those neural pathways will change fairly quickly. It won't always be like this. One of the things I say to people, it's really important to understand, is that early sobriety is not how it is long term. The first year is very unique. It's a unique experience. It's not how it is in medium and long-term sobriety, but a lot of it is because it's a massive lifestyle change. You have to go through all the firsts: first birthday, first July 4th, first Christmas, first vacation, sober.
St. Patty's Day.
Exactly. And all those things are weird. all those things are weird at first. It's weird not drinking at first. That there's no getting away. And then it becomes your new normal. Kind of knowing all of that stuff and navigating, and also allowing yourself like a get out clause that like, okay, I'm not going to go to the barbecue on Friday. It just feels really triggering and I just want to build another sober day. And knowing that is a period of time that will pass and it won't always be like that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great stuff. Well said. You said something too. I want to touch on it. The going for a walk at 5 o'clock. You
Mm-hmm.
couldn't know this, but very specifically, my trigger, whatever you want to call it, was when I was working still, it was taking off my corporate hat. And unfortunately, post COVID, it's all virtual. So I'm working in the same home where my children and my wife are. I get off a meeting, sitting in a face to face. I don't get to resolve and solve and plan and wrap up and tidy up that day. And I have a lot of things going on at work, but I have to still get up and walk into the other room and then immediately pick up a crying child and my wife goes out the door, right? So like that transition was always really hard for me. And one of the things that I found that worked, it was so simple, but I was working out in the morning instead of the afternoon. And by starting work earlier and ending earlier and working out in the afternoon and giving myself that time to process the day and set up the end of the day was powerful to remove that feeling of uneasiness and chaos that I was
Yeah.
having earlier. So something simple like that, maybe just assessing your day and thinking like, is there ways that I can tweak this to make it more manageable? But you nailed it. That like 5 o'clock was my time. And what I did was I would pick up a beer. The beer got stronger, turned into two. Next thing you know it, I've got a habit that moves to an addiction and I'm in trouble, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I know the answer to this question, getting to know you for about an hour, this next one, but actually I do know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What would you say? Because I have friends who have experimented with ways to cut back alcohol and then stop. And I have one in particular that dove headfirst into THC, like marijuana type products. And the justification that he or she said was, look, it's helping me. It worked and it doesn't have the consequences physically and socially and relationally that alcohol does. And then that person wound up basically developing, in my opinion, another full-blown kind of habit. But what say you to someone who's considering replacing alcohol with something else to help?
So, from a harm minimization perspective, alcohol is very catastrophic for our bodies and our brains and our lives and our relationships certainly when it's got to a problematic stage. So, if you're replacing that with cannabis from a harm minimization perspective, there will probably be an improvement in your life circumstances. Now, cannabis has its own set of risks and consequences. I mean, it can induce psychosis and paranoia and all that kind of stuff. I would prefer to walk through our British town centres where all the bars are, or maybe the college campuses on a Saturday night where people were stoned rather than drunk, because stoned people don't tend to cause fights or be violent. But again, it just comes back to you're anesthetizing your life. And I want to be fully present. So, I mean, is it better? A bit, but it comes with a whole bunch of consequences and cost to it. But it just comes
Yeah.
back to not being fully present in your life.
And borrowing from what you said earlier, you're now just outsourcing to another
Yeah,
substance.
it's exactly. And that's what people will do. That if people just do the 10% not drinking, what you will see, that we call it cross addiction, is we haven't got a good way to deal with how we feel and manage how we feel. And our brains will go, okay, our brains are like Google search engines. They'll go, okay, we're not doing the top one. What's number two, three? So, I mean, I did this commonly people will go to food. It's usually a very common one. Now it's screens as well, exercise, like where it's unbalanced, where there's, lots of behavioral stuff. What we're trying to do is fix feelings. So until we develop that skill and are able to do that, we will always look for an outside fix for an inside problem.
Well said. Outside fix. And on the topic of digital, real quickly, we just did an episode on something called zombie scrolling. It's just a term, but basically, I'll put my words on it. You're just mindlessly searching for small dopamine hits because you're
Yeah.
uncomfortable on the outside and you're searching for something. But you could see how someone who maybe has that propensity to have an issue to need to self-medicate, if they remove alcohol, they could easily slip into something else that seemingly is more benign that could develop and take that same kind of hold. I'll throw out the term and then ask the question and give you some time to get your wheels spinning. But moderation, alcohol moderation, right? So if somebody decides they have a problem with alcohol and then they decide to take a step back, a break, but they're either not quite sure if it's permanent or they think it's permanent. And then when they get to a healthier place, they start to second guess that decision. What are your views on the topic of moderation as a goal for someone who has already learned that alcohol has been a problem in their life?
I think moderation's BS. And it's for all of the reasons that I've said. The only reason that people try to moderate their alcohol use is because their belief that without it, their lives will lack. So it's, if I can just figure out the formula to get all the good stuff that alcohol promises me, it promises me I will have fun. That's how, it's the best way to reward myself at the end of the day. And I'll connect and I'll fit in and I'll belong. As long as you believe that, you will try to moderate. Here's the other thing is, oh my God, is it hard work? Like, oh my God, like you're working against your brain chemistry, because once you ingest alcohol, it lowers your inhibitions and any promises you made the day before fly out the window. But it's hard work. For what? For what? It's a self-delusion. It's because we believe if we don't have alcohol in our life in some way, shape, if I just have just two drinks, I will be lacking. My life will lack. I will have less than. It's a perception.
Yeah. I'm going to try to summarize because I'm tracking with you here. Your truth, or what you believe to be black and white true, is that the most joyful life is one that's fully connected. Alcohol always disconnects somewhat to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, because the truth is the most purpose-driven, joyful life is fully connected, if alcohol always disconnects us, then it can never have a place. And the pursuit should always be full, soberful living.
I couldn't said it better myself. It's the cost. It's the cost. The cost has been deliberately obscured. Like the cost of alcohol is massive on our bodies and our brains and our relationships and our self-esteem and the cost is massive.
And our wallets.
Yeah, everything. So yeah, I feel like I've really, my gratitude for sobriety has only increased the longer I've got sober, especially now I'm in my 50s. I just feel so lucky that and again, I was desperate. I was looking for answers for a long time. People say to me, God, I wish I had your wisdom or strength and I was like, I had no wisdom and no strength. I was desperate. I'd have done anything. And I feel so lucky that, because every single thing that I have in my life is not just because I don't drink, it's because I'm sober. I'm emotionally sober. Like I have built a life. I have a second chance life. There's no way I would have had this life. I would have been dead. I wouldn't have made it. But there's no way I could have had this life if alcohol was any part of it. And so my gratitude just increases. I mean, aging, I'm going to tell you, I'm pretty like, wow, what a freaking advantage I have. Like just aging and, I'm 51. Like it's just, I just feel so lucky that I got given this secret and everything I have is because of it.
From my standpoint, just getting to know you and understanding you. I mean, look, between your lived experience, your training, your compassion for people, and then what I would say your God-given ability to communicate it, I think everybody is lucky to have you and your wisdom, which you have found. And I'm so grateful that you've landed where you are, because some people might just take your experiences and go on with their life, but you've decided to dedicate your life towards helping other people find what you have, which is a connectedness to yourself and a gratitude. And I'm grateful for you. As you look forward into 2024, what are you, rapid fire answer, what are you most excited about? What are you looking forward to this year?
Working less.
Working less. Okay. And doing
I'm trying
what
to work a little bit less. And yeah, I'm trying to get a TV show off the ground. So I'm looking forward to moving forward to that.
Anything you can share, or are we hush hush on the TV show?
No, sure. I want to do a reality show called Should I Stop Drinking, which takes people on this journey. So, and again, all it is a shift in perception and beliefs. Because I think all the TV shows have been like, rock bottom, like intervention. And I think what everyone does is they watch that, go, oh, God, I'm not that bad.
Not relatable. Yeah.
So not relatable. And I want to work with people who look like you, who are like on the outside, everything looks great, but they're not happy with their relationship with alcohol, and take them on that journey and let other people see it. That's
Heck
what
yeah.
that's what I want
Heck
to
yeah. Hey, I hope that show happens because it's amazing. And that is relatable. And I think more common, unfortunately, than we would think as we just kind of walk through our towns and our communities. I think a lot of people are still struggling with that type of thing. So
Yeah, I agree.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay. It's been a pleasure and a blessing. And I'm so grateful for you coming on the show, Veronica. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was fabulous.
All right. Veronica Valli, everybody.